And we're live. Good evening. Today I have with me a really, really interesting person. We've been friends for a very long time. I'm proud to call him my friend. Edetean Ojo is the executive director of Media Rights Agenda. I hope I'm still correct. And he's been in the fore of fighting to ensure that the people have a right to know. He's a defender of media rights. He's a defender of freedom of the press. He's a defender of access to information. And every time people talk about the Freedom of Information Act, they almost never remember where it started from. I know all of the work that Edet put into that. Edet traversed continents and entered every room he possibly could to insist that Nigerians had a right to access to information. And he started this right from the Abacha years. Indeed, I think almost preceding that. And I recall globetrotting practically that Edet had to do, comparing all kinds of various statutes, ensuring that we did one that Nigerians would accept. And so, quite frankly, every time I look at the FOI, I say, Edet, you know what? You just wrote your name in gold. I don't know if he ever remembers that that's what he's done. But today, Edet and I will be talking about the whole conversation around press freedom. And yes, we will go there. We will go to Calabar and find out whether journalists are allowed to ask stupid questions. Oh, yes, I am actually touching that tiger's tail. Edet, you're welcome to Conversations with IBEE.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Edet, just think, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the media. Let me start with the media today. Some of us say, oh, the media is no longer what it used to be. You're actively one person who has monitored the media over several decades. Do you agree with the assessment that the media today is no longer what it used to be?
Well, unfortunately, when a lot of people think about the media, they think it's a monolithic entity. But the truth is that, as corny as it may sound, the media is a marketplace of ideas. So you have all kinds of tendencies in that marketplace. You have those who have a very high level of professionalism, but you also have those who operate with very low ethical standards. Some people either because they often cannot go away with impression that the entire media community, which sometimes so they call a dog a bad name. It's not effective. But that is not to say that there are no problems with the media. There are a lot of issues ranging from issues of media freedom, which you have harped on, but also issues of professionalism, journalists who are not very well trained, or those who may have the training but don't apply the professional standards that the sector requires. So I think it's difficult to put all of the media in one basket. I find that when I go through media outputs, there are some that are extremely impressive, but there are also some that are really quite disgusting, to be honest. But I think unless we're talking about a particular journalist or a particular media outlet, it may be difficult to use a sentence or a word to characterize the media.
So, Edet, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave you in this spot. Why are you running away from making an assessment? The media today.
I'm quite happy to make an assessment. Like I said, So when you look a few decades ago, the media sector was a lot smaller. When you look at the share numbers, for instance, if you're looking at the broadcast sector,
Yeah.
um, a, a couple of decades ago, we only had a few radio and television stations around the country. Over the last 2 decades or so, in fact, since the deregulation of the media sector, there's been an explosion in the broadcast sector. You now have, privately owned radio and television stations. You now have campus radio stations. And most recently, the National Broadcasting Commission has licensed community radio stations. So the landscape is changing, it's evolving, but there are also a lot of media organizations. Now, when we look at what the internet itself has brought, you find that a lot of people are establishing media online, many of them without any form of license or regulation or registration. So if you just go online, you can access all types of media. Now, there's been an effort to distinguish between mainstream media and what we call citizen media, citizen journalism, and so on. So when we want to do an assessment, I think it's important to be clear which media we are assessing, because they are all not the same. They all do not operate with the same level of credibility, with the same level of resources, with the same level of editorial quality, direction, not even an understanding of what the profession is about. There are some who understand that their role is to hold government accountable. But we also have some media professionals and media outlets that see media as an opportunity for them to enrich themselves through corrupt practices. So it's a very wide terrain with all kinds of tendencies that you see out there.
So let me ask you something, Edit. One of the things that we've talked about, and I'm, is the fact that the media has a role to play. Sometimes I don't want to say sometimes, all the time, quite frankly, in helping to shape societal discourse. And again, you've talked about the fact that we've got so many more, so many more. Has that improved the access of everyone to media space? Because now you have community radios. And I recall that at various times, the media rights agenda actually was fighting about this matter of community radios. I know when you held tons and tons and tons of workshops and you engaged government on the matter of community radios. Would you say that right now, with the multiplicity of media, whether it is community radios or whether it's the internet, the access to the internet, would you say that a lot more people now have access to media?
I would say that a lot more people now have access to the media, but I would not say that everyone has access. Unfortunately, we still have significant sections of this society that don't have any access or effective access to media for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's infrastructure. If you look at parts of this country where there is no electricity supply, then people find it difficult to watch television or even listen to the radio. Illiteracy is still at a very high level in Nigeria. That means that there are quite a significant number of people who cannot read newspapers. So there are a whole range of issues that are militating against people's ability to have access to media. And then the other bigger question about media literacy. Uh, People are constantly being assaulted by all types of information coming at them from different places. The ability to navigate that terrain, to understand what is reliable and what is not, to understand what kinds of information they can make decisions on, and what kinds of information they should either dismiss outright or at best be skeptical about, is still something that a lot of our people do not know. And I don't see a whole lot of media literacy programs going on in this country. We continue to complain about the dangers of misinformation and disinformation, and think that the only response is to lock up people or to ban media outlets and things like that. When I think the most effective response would be to undertake media literacy programs so that people are not easily misled by information they come across from media outlets that may not be operating on very high professional standards or level. So I think that we're having more people having access to media. We're having more people having access to information, especially with the number of people who now have mobile phones, and some of them using them to access news sources or information sources. But we are still a far cry from 100% access to media for all Nigerians.
Let me ask you, Edith. From where some people start, actually, from where I'm sitting, I'm asking myself, is the media still relevant? Do we need the media? What role does the media even play? Of what use is the media?
I think the media is more relevant, more important, more useful now than ever before. Now, in the past, a lot of people relied almost exclusively on the media for their information, and they made a whole range of decisions based on the information that they got through the media. Now, in today's digital age, people have all kinds of sources of information. Most of those sources of information don't have any gatekeeping, not gated in any way, and the information is totally undeniable. Now, because of the lack of media literacy that I talked about earlier, um, quite a large number of citizens are taking this information and acting on them as if they are true, when much of the information out there is either untrue or even harmful. So we need, at this point in time, sources of information that can guarantee the reliability of the information, the accuracy of the information, the balance of the information that we're getting, and it's only professional media that can guarantee us that we can be assured of that kind of information from social media sources or just from anything we get online. So while there is a lot of focus in terms of the sources of information that are now available, I think that the media, when I use the media, I'm referring to mainstream conventional legacy media. I think it's more important than ever before, because now we really need to be able to get information that is reliable.
Forgive me, Edith, and you won't believe it, but guys, this is what we go through all the time. I have two routers on this show, and yet we have this problem. You have to forgive me. So
Uh,
yes, you were to.
like, like,
So I have two routers. I don't want to call their names, and we have this problem. But anyway, you were saying something about the fact that we cannot rely on non-conventional media if we want to talk, if we want to get reliable information.
yeah.
But the conventional media right now is emasculated. If you take another look, you're going to find that, look at the print sector. What is happening to a lot of those who were the giants? in the print sector. If you're talking about, in fact, the magazines are gone. You practically don't see the magazines, and this is for someone who plays in that sector. The newspapers are barely managing to survive, and sometimes you ask yourself, are they actually surviving by the money they make from sales and from adverts? I know that you've done thorough work in this area, and if I ask you in terms of copies sold, what's going on? Even when you talk about the number of hits to regular newspaper websites. So, in that kind of environment where the media is being strangulated economically, can we honestly have a reliable media?
Unfortunately, no. But again, I think it's important to make the distinction between those who are making an effort to be professional and those that are just trying to survive by any means possible. But at the end of the day, I think that the responsibility falls back on the market, on the audience. Why are newspapers divided? You know that if you a decade or two ago, when the Nigerian population was much smaller, when the markets were smaller, if you may use that expression, newspaper circulation was extremely high. Now, people are not buying newspapers. So it's difficult for newspapers to get the revenue that it needs to continue to provide quality information. Now, can we argue that the situation has arisen because ordinary
Oh, boy.
so I think that it's difficult to blame the media alone for the situation we find ourselves because media everywhere relies on audiences, either directly buying newspapers, pay for subscription or other services, or advertising in the media to fund its operation. Now, increasingly, all of those sources of revenue are disappearing. So, in an effort to survive, you find that some media outlets think that, well, I mean, we just need to do whatever we can to survive, are selling their clothes basically in order to survive. So, as a community, as a sector, we need to start to have a conversation about this reality and ask ourselves, what is the price we're willing to pay? How much are we willing to pay this price? And lose the respect, dignity, and pride that used to come with the profession. I mean, I remember in my early days in journalism, I used to be so excited to break a story. I mean, I feel like the world is waiting to read my story.
That's right.
Basically, that I am shining a light on that piece of information, event, whatever, for so many thousands of people. Now, when you don't feel that pride anymore, what is your motivation? What drives you? What because I mean, the profession was never one where you could make money. All you really hope to at best was to have a stature of somebody that was respected and looked up to because you were breaking stories or you wrote prose that got people really excited and jumping up on their feet. Now, when you lose all of that, what do you have? A sense of pride, dignity, public respect, all of that is gone. So we have to find a way to tell ourselves that uh, the price we're paying is too high. We're losing everything that used to drive us. How do we regain that reality? How do we regain the public respect, the standing that we used to have in our sector? Like many other professionals.
You see, and as you speak, I practically feel like you're driving a knife through my heart. And I'm saying that with every sense of responsibility. Because I mean, this is speaking as someone who cannot publish anymore. And I can't publish because I can't afford to publish. Because I don't know how to have journalists go out, do a story, and not get paid. Even the cost of news gathering by itself. As a young reporter, Newswatch would pay. If a conference was holding at the Hilton, Newswatch would pay for its reporters to be housed at the Hilton. Newswatch would not ask you to go to that conference because it could afford to. Now, today, if you send a reporter out, you can't even fund from airfare to accommodation to the local runs. And my problem, therefore, and I come to you as someone who's been in media development and media advocacy, how can we save the media? How can we ensure that the media is able to be the gadfly that it is supposed to be? How can we prevent the media from being taken by people who, by the way, run around, and I'm coming to that, and I am going there, run around doing inspection that nobody sent them and expecting us to be on their trail because they're paying our tickets, and therefore shutting up our mouths because it's bad manners to talk while eating? How can we save the media from that? Connectivity again. Edit. These connections. These
Sorry,
connections.
I
Did you hear
think
what I? This time it was from. Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said?
all of it.
Okay, so I said, as someone in media development, how can we protect the media? How can we safeguard the media from being unable to perform its role because it's bad manners to talk while eating? Oh yeah, because if Lagbaja Nigeria Limited pays for my trip to cover the groundbreaking ceremony of its refinery somewhere, I better be able to say everything good about it and not notice everything bad, including the fact that it evades taxes. If Turaki State invites me to come and see the phenomenal work its governor has done in the last 4 years, and I go and I see no work, not to talk of phenomenal, my ticket was paid, my accommodation was paid, I have to find a way to notice some work if there was none. How do we safeguard the media and the dignity of the media at this time? And this is for those of you in media development.
Well, I think the first step is really what we're doing now, which is having a conversation about it. I have been so depressed about the fact that despite all of the challenges facing the sector, we don't have these kinds of conversations. What is the state of the media? What is our new reality? How are we prepared to confront this reality? We don't have sectoral conversations about this issue, so that we can also begin to think what strategies are available to us to overcome some of these challenges. So long as that is not happening in the sector, we would continue to confront these challenges. And I think that there are a lot of professional bodies, associations, and unions within the media. They need to find a way to facilitate these conversations that can enable us to rescue the profession. But having said that, part of the question we need to ask ourselves, why are we appearing to be irrelevant? Because, I mean, that was your starting point. The media are still relevant. Now, why is it that anybody will ask that? Why is it that many people feel that they don't need the media anymore? Now, just some less than 20 years ago or thereabout, we had GSM introduced into this country, and I was really skeptical about the possibility that it would survive, because I didn't think people would be so willing to put money into communication. But we see that people are willing to use their last penny to buy recharge cards so that they can make phone calls, they can receive phone calls. So they understand the value of information. They understand the value of communication. As a sector, we have not been able to transfer that understanding to our market, our audience, about the value of the service that we provide as a sector. So they go away feeling that we're irrelevant to things. Whereas, every human being is making decisions on a daily basis on information that they have or that they have access to. And we are in the information business. We are the facilitators of information. How can it be that when every human being survives on information, we, the facilitators, we are not able to be relevant in their lives? So I think that these are important questions that we need to ask ourselves and say, how do we, first of all, enable our audience to understand the value of the service that we provide, such that they remain interested in that service, they're willing to pay for the service, they're willing to stand up for us when we come under attack. Because I've never seen a situation where members of the public go on demonstration or protest because media was shut down, or a journalist was assaulted, or even killed. People move around like it doesn't affect them, it's not their business. Whereas this is a sector, and if you take it to a personal level, these are the people who are bringing information to you that enables you to know what's going on around you, that enables you to make decisions in your life, and sometimes life-changing decisions. Yet, we don't see the value of the service that those people provide. Are we hard sales persons for our products? These are critical questions I think that we need to ask, because we are moving from a situation and we blame poverty, we blame illiteracy and all of that for the lower audiences that we're having increasingly. But when you look at the telecommunications sector, it seems that there is no limit to the amount of money that can be made from that communication sector, that arm of the communication sector. So I think that if we can have our various bodies facilitate this sort of conversation, we can analyze and examine the challenges and collectively find solutions to them.
And I'm going to come back to the role of the various bodies, professional bodies in the media. But before I go there, let me ask you, Edith, is this a Nigerian problem or is it a global problem? Across the world, are we seeing fewer numbers? Or is this just limited to us here in Nigeria?
I think to a large extent, it's a global problem to the extent that technology is changing the way people access information. So, traditional media is no longer the exclusive purveyor of information. That has affected the size of media audiences. But it is very stark in a place like Nigeria, and I think that the problem is much worse than it is in some other parts of the world because of a variety of other challenges that the media sector is facing, including those of illiteracy, poverty, extreme ignorance. Sometimes you listen to people argue publicly or say things publicly and shame wash it over you, assuming you still have the capacity for debate. But the sort of nonsensical statement that people make with such extreme ignorance and such pride in their ignorance is depressing. So are we failing to enlighten our society? Because I feel that the media remains the light of the society. And if we fail to that duty, unfortunately, we will suffer the backlash, which is
Yeah.
how the ignorance comes back on us. So I think that yeah, it's a global problem. Media markets are shrinking, but the rate at which it is shrinking in Nigeria is way, way too fast. Media is almost being pushed out of relevance. Everybody is going to social media to get their information. And we really know what's out there. We know how dangerous that is. Because, that is a space that is totally unmediated, that anybody can pick anything out there. And when you don't have a sophisticated population to navigate that kind of environment, of course, we're going to face all tragedies that come.
So let me ask something, Edith. You did all of that work on the Freedom of Information Bill. All of that work, and the act has been passed. All of that work on access to information. You sit back in your room and you wonder, are people even taking advantage of it? Especially considering that this act enables businessmen, professionals to ask questions. Is anybody asking questions?
Uh, uh, People are maybe not to the degree that somebody like me had thought it would be happening. But one thing that the Freedom of Information Act does is it empowers ordinary people to ask questions, because prior to it, we really did not have a basis. We really did not have any instrument that gave us that kind of power. And what tells me now that gradually it will begin to have an impact is that increasingly we see a lot of government agencies pushing back. There's very concerted intimidation going on right now among government agencies that are harassing and intimidating individuals and organizations that are using the Freedom of Information Act to ask them questions. And they are going to offices and harassing people simply because they have asked. The DSS is doing this. You send a Freedom of Information request, they send a team to your office to come and harass you. And the government is absolutely silent about this, because that institution, that agency, appears to have gone completely out of control.
Mm.
You are using an instrument of the law to ask questions, which is the right given to you under the law, and you are being harassed. But there are other agencies, the Bureau for Public Enterprises, which has been responsible for the sale of a lot of public utilities, is pushing back, is harassing civil society organizations and other individuals that are using the act to ask them for information. So, if the government is serious about being transparent and accountable, about empowering people to participate in governance, they have to put a stop to this nonsense. It's a violation of Nigeria's obligations under international, and very soon it will be another source of embarrassment for the country at the international level, that people are exercising their right and government agencies are harassing them for doing so. So at this point in time, I would have thought that what the government would be engaged in is enlightening people about the existence of the Freedom of Information Act and how to use it to ask for information, worried about misinformation and disinformation, and to have a tool that enables people who are interested in acquiring accurate, reliable, and genuine information. The government should be in the forefront of promoting that, of making it something that really becomes the tool for fighting misinformation and disinformation. But when you have government agencies acting, What that means is that you're discouraging people who are looking for reliable information, accurate information, genuine information. And after a while, they become discouraged. They will fall back on other sources and to use. So that is the reality. But it's 9 years old now. In a few weeks, we'll be looking at the 10th anniversary of the Constitution Act in Nigeria. It's not been utilized as much as I hoped, but I can see that government agencies are feeling the impact of people asking this question. Of course, it's a whole debate. What are people doing with questions? How much is the media part of that move to use the Freedom of Information Act to source information that they then provide to their audience? But I mean, this remains work in progress, and it is never something that will be mission accomplished.
Well, is it possible, though, that people don't even understand how this act can be so empowering? And that includes government itself. Does government understand that the Freedom of Information Act can actually be empowering for them? What are groups like yours, and indeed other groups that had been in the fore of this fight, doing to help them understand? Because perhaps by themselves they have no clue how empowering the Freedom of Information Act is to government.
I mean, you're absolutely right that, and that includes the vast majority of government officials. Now, the other reality we need to look at is that the Freedom of Information Act is of information. Ordinary people don't go about picking up information to read. So a lot of people have not been to understand what it provides. Their rights under the law, how to use it, so on and so forth. So we need to find a way to communicate this information about the existence of the law, what it provides for, and how to use it. To people who are not going to be reading the law anytime soon. Even lawyers don't just go in pieces of legislation to read. Unless somebody has been them to represent them, then some law is involved. They're going to read the law. So there is that reality that because this is put in a law, a lot of ordinary people are not going to get up and start reading it. But I think that the role of government, especially a government that is interested in empowering citizens to participate in governance, would be to also look for ways of educating and enlightening members of the government. I also think that the media has a very important role in this respect to also enlighten the public about the existence of the law and how to use it. Unfortunately, many journalists themselves are ignorant about it, and obviously you cannot give what you don't have. So if you don't have the knowledge, transferring that to anybody else an impossibility. So these are some of the issues. But to ask what organizations like mine are doing, we've held dozens and dozens of workshops all over the country. But when you look at the size and function of this country, and you look at what is holding, if you hold a hundred of let's say participants each, you probably would have reached 5,000 people. Now, the cost of doing that is enormous. But in terms of the overall picture, that is erosion. So, organizations like mine have limited capacity to be able to change that dynamic. I think that it's important that a variety of stakeholders, the media, including government, are part of that process of enlightening ordinary citizens that, look, if we don't play our role as active citizens, government will never serve our interests. We have to make demands of government. We have to ensure that government is transparent. We have to ensure that government is transparent and is accountable to us. Those are the ways that we can impact together. If we don't do all of this and we just get government to roll on its own, then we may find that the best of intention they would not understand what our needs and interests are. And the track on which we are going may be very different from our own expectations and needs. So this is the danger we face as citizens that are docile, not engaging, not acting, not asking questions.
Is it possible, though, that for government, this is what they want? A docile citizenry that asks no questions? Because you would expect that part of what government would do, and just as there was some kind of attempt to do that under Mrs. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, where she actually would take time to break down the budget, where she took time to break down the fiscal responsibility bill and to act, and to let people understand what they could do. I would think that that's part of what a responsible and responsive government would aim at doing. Would actually sit down, you have the National Orientation Agency, and it makes it a point of duty to break down the FOI Act and to say to people, this is how you can ask. I mean, if we have a whistleblower act, perhaps it would have been, we're going to give all of these billions to whistleblowers. But maybe if we just broke down the Freedom of Information Act and put it out there, citizens might actually begin to see that they have a role and that they are empowered to ask questions. So rather than some of the theatrics, and excuse my use of the word, that we have, where we're having a million public hearings back and forth, and name calling and no name calling, and letters that we never quite understand, and all of that. Just a simple FOI request would answer some of the millions of questions that we put people through 2 weeks of TV charade having. And excuse me for sounding that way. But what do you think?
I agree with you that it's even in the best interest of the government to promote a tool like this. Now, you know, if you look at Nigeria in many parts of the world, ordinary citizens don't trust government. They don't have any confidence in government. The government is really regarded as a user. Now, the reason that is so is because very often there is a lack of understanding of the real challenges that exist in government. If you were open and transparent as a government, and you say to citizens, the government is broke, the government does not have money, and they can ascertain for themselves through the use of instruments like the Freedom of Information Act. Citizens then understand that the government is really broke, it doesn't have money, and it cannot do all the things that people are demanding. In this country, you are seeing one set of workers after the other going on strike because they keep expecting paid more, paid better, and so on. And when government says it cannot afford that, nobody believes it. But if government was open and transparent and responsive, then we can all see how much is in the coffers, what government actually has. And we can figure out for ourselves that the demands that we're making on government are unrealistic under circumstances. But by failing to be open and transparent, the government is shooting itself in the foot. Because when it says that it cannot afford to provide this service or that service, or even pay people their salary, nobody believes them. Now, you talked about what simple FOI requests can do. Government does not even need to wait for the FOI request. You can proactively disclose information. What kinds of information are people interested in? What kinds of information do people need? And put the information out there proactively, as the FOI Act also envisages. That way, you reduce the burden of your officials having to process dozens or hundreds or thousands of requests for information, because you just put it out there for anybody who is interested to proactively access. We're losing that possibility because government is by default secretive, is instinctively resistant to any idea that it can open up to provide citizens with information. That is part of the problem we face. But the ultimate damage trust in government that results as and because of this sort of practice where the government is not viewed as being transparent, they are refusing to provide even most innocuous form of information. You ask, what was your budget as an agency for last year? And somebody is hiding that information. Your budget. I mean, why would anybody hide? But surprisingly, a lot of agencies are not even willing to disclose how much was voted for them. Then, how much did you actually receive? What was your now? If you are a governor, for instance, and at the beginning of the year you announce a budget and you start to discuss money. The money is not getting to the various sectors that where the money is needed. I would think that as a governor, you want to know that so that you can put whatever is preventing your agenda from being implemented. If your officials are stealing money that you have intended to do certain projects, to provide certain services, wouldn't you want to know that so that you can sort out the problem? But you then encourage your officials to be secretive, not to provide information, not to tell people what's going on. You undermine yourself as a result because you are seen as somebody who is not capable. Whereas the blame lies further down the road, not really with you because you put all of these plans. They've just not been implemented by the people who are supposed to implement them because they have put the money in their pocket. That does not help as a leader. Unfortunately, as simple and straightforward as this logic appears, a lot of our leaders don't understand. They are not able to figure it out.
So let me ask you. I listened to you, and one thread that has run consistently through your conversation is trust. People don't trust the media. Citizens don't trust the government. Government doesn't even trust itself and doesn't trust its citizens. So you have a total breakdown of trust. How can we build trust back?
Well, on the part of government, I think openness, transparency, accountability would be a huge help because it enables citizens to see what you're doing, what your plans are, what is working, what is not working, but also enables them to get into the governance process because they have the information. For the media, we are seen as corrupt, and that's a big problem because, as you know, once you are corrupt, you can't be trusted to provide independent, accurate, reliable, objective information. As you said, when Blacklisting invites you and pays your ticket, you can't afford to go and be independent and objective where you get there. So those are some of the challenges that we're seen as corrupt. We are not as professional as the code of ethics of our profession requires us to be. So all of this rob public trust. And therefore, when we get information, sometimes people are not sure whether to believe or not. So again, we want to end public trust. We need to be more professional. We need to try and deal with the corruption in the media. I have said to the successful leadership of the Nigeria Union of Journalists who complain about crack journalists, fake journalists. And I've said to them, why do people who come to the media pretending to be journalists? It's because of the corruption. If you root out corruption from media, what is the incentive for anybody to come and pretend to be a journalist? There's no money to be made if you're actually doing the work. It's when you come expecting to get some bribery or maybe a Ghana that you find that it's attractive for people who are not journalists to come and pretend that they are journalists. So rather than thinking of how to prevent non-journalists from coming into the profession, deal with the issue of corruption. All those people would go somewhere else.
Okay, Edet. Now to the big elephant in the room. Deal with corruption. How do we deal with corruption at the levels of, now, the Guild of Editors, the Union of Journalists, the Newspaper Proprietors Association? All of these are supposed to be groups whose job it is to self-regulate the media, whose job it is to insist on keeping to standards. Yet, if they're not giving awards to various people, they're organizing tours, by the way, funded by the same people who they want to assess. So how do we get, and then at the level of the MPA, publishers are sharing their brandy and sharing a whiskey and sharing a beer and having hearty laughs and feeling like we're now, we're in the old boys club and patting each other's backs, and therefore, in some instances, sacrificing reporters who've done a damn good job. How can we therefore, look, these three groups, what should they be doing? Because you and I might, maybe we agree, maybe we'll disagree as to whether they're actually honestly and sincerely protecting anybody. But what should these three groups be doing? You've got the NUJ, you've got the Guild, you've got the MPA, and are they playing their role? Are they a voice in this conversation?
Well, if for the AIBEE and the Guild, their work is regulated by a set of professional standards, the Code of Ethics for Nigerian journalists. But there are two problems with that. One is, if you ask many journalists, they have never read it. They have no clue what it is. So one requirement would be to ensure that everybody who calls him or herself a journalist reads the Code of Ethics. That is the guiding document for your profession. So, in the media house, if every media house undertakes to enforce professional standards, then all their workers who are journalists should first and foremost read the Code of Ethics. Indeed, when they are being admitted into the profession, being employed in the media organization, a copy of the Code of Ethics should be one of the things they are given. And if they undergo any sort of periodic appraisal assessment of performance or promotion, part of that assessment should be on your knowledge and familiarity with the Code of Ethics. So that is the first thing. The second thing is to have independent bodies that enforce this code. I'm not talking of some handpicked people that are themselves corrupt now sitting over corruption. You actually put an independent board to enforce the code of ethics. If you breach the code of ethics, you are sanctioned. Now, even if all we do is name and shame, I tell you, after a while, that will begin to make an impact, and people would
That is if anybody. That is if we have any shame as a people.
Well, some people do, and depending on what you call. So, if you were leaving your media organization and you go somewhere to apply for a job, and they tell you, "Oh, you were the person who was listed in a hall of shame or in a blacklist 2 years ago for unprofessional conduct. We are not giving you a job." By the time that happens to a few people, I tell you, it will start to make an impact. It doesn't matter what your own personal standards are.
You know what? You know what my grandfather. My grandfather had a saying. He said, "Look at him who promises me a shoe. Look at what he wears." Who is the
Yeah.
person who is going to be telling you you were blacklisted? Is it the same person who just finished having some coffee and left with a briefcase?
Well, again, if you now employ somebody who has been blacklisted, it's going to impact you because it says a lot about your own standards and your own ethical conduct. somebody who has been publicly blacklisted comes to your organization and you give them a job, you are going to spend a lot of time trying to explain and defend why you did.
Even if
So,
there are
so
organizations that are known, even if there are organizations that are known to be corrupt, and yet they are the organizations that people would rather do business with.
well, such organizations continue to operate because there seems to be public acceptance. There's,
Absolutely.
we appear to condone it. But where we start to reject such organizations, where they start to lose markets, audiences as a result of public perception of them, then they will make an effort to shape up. But nobody says that the only thing that can be done is naming and shaming. There's absolutely no reason why a journalist cannot be suspended if they have been found guilty of violating a code of ethics. You can be suspended for some months from
Practicing.
journalism by an independent body. The problem I have is with government performing such a role because we know that there will be abuse. But if we can actually constitute independent bodies made up of your peers or people from within the industry, I would have a lot more confidence in that because we understand the standards and the professional requirements. For
That
the
would take.
publishers, for the publishers, they are really not professional journalists, so we cannot use the code of ethics for journalists for them. But I think that the time has come for us as a sector, as an industry, to also begin to look at the possibility of putting in place a code of ethics for media owners. We should include things like the media
Paying
owner should
salaries.
fair in the editorial functions of the media. That is not your role. You are not a journalist. You can't go and start putting stories or yanking
How
stories.
can you enforce it? You know why I ask that? Something that the pharmacists have done is to say that you cannot own a pharmacy if you're not a pharmacist. Or if that pharmacy must happen, then it happens with a pharmacist license. And so if there are issues of fake drug, that pharmacist license is suspended.
Yeah.
So should we begin to look at things like that, that begin to place some demand on business owners so that media business doesn't just become like you're selling crayfish in the market, whether it
Yeah.
is a TV station or radio station or print outlet. Can we begin to have a conversation around saying, you know what, as the guild and as journalists, can we start saying, we won't work for you if you're not one of us? So that you then have a basis, because I think very much that that might begin to help to even insist that the professionalism starts from the top. Because I'm a river woman. They say if the head of the fish is rotting, the whole fish is rotting.
Well, again, as you've just hit on, we are not even having these conversations in the media sector about how do we address these challenges of professionalism, of infrastructure, of market, of the impact of technologies, and so on. There's nowhere where we are having these conversations in the media sector as a collective. There are a lot of very bright people in the media, and I'm sure that if we're having this conversation, we could come up with enough ideas to address this problem. But we are not talking about them. We are pretending that they don't exist, and they're telling us.
We're coming back to you to ask you to start having that conversation. But on a last note, Edet, I had, and this is, like I said, I was going to touch that tiger's tail anyway. So I've been trying to wonder why someone who was a public servant would think it is okay to be irate and to be rude and uncouth in choice of language to a reporter. What have we done to earn that kind of umbrage?
Well, unfortunately, rightly or wrongly, over the years, people have believed that when they call a press conference, they have something to say, they say it, they distribute some money, and the bloody journalists go and report what they said exactly how they said it. They don't expect to be asked tough questions.
which is utter
They have
nonsense.
they have not they have never understood that to be part of the function of the journalist to ask them tough questions. So they just think you read a prepared text or say something and then you provide some refreshment and some brown envelopes, whatever, and then you're done. So when the whole question and answer session was more or less a ritual where you tried very hard as a journalist not to upset anything.
Hmm.
So when a journalist stands up and asks a very legitimate question,
Hmm.
a very legitimate question to say, you're traveling around the country to inspect projects or performance of public officials. Who is funding this? I cannot think of a more legitimate question under those circumstances.
Mhm.
And you are upset. You
And
are
whereas that question actually gives you a
cannot
leverage to to actually come out smelling like a rose. Because
I've
if you
tried,
are
I've tried that question, which is in the minds of a lot of people that who is paying this man to be going around assessing things? What is
because
he?
just in case it's volunteerism, people then applaud you for being such a very selfless volunteer, spending your own money to travel around just to help us see what's going wrong. I mean, that I would think gives you a podium to stand on and celebrate. That's a great soapbox for you right
You
there.
have nothing to hide. But
Exactly.
obviously, when you are hiding something, then you look for a way to avoid answering the question and scatter everything. You know, when kids play and then you see that they are beating you too much, you scatter everything so that the game cannot continue. No winner can be declared.
Oh my
That was,
goodness.
yeah, for me, it was avoidance, classic avoidance. Because it was a very simple, straightforward, legitimate question. Who is funding you? Who is funding this trip? It's an expensive thing to be undertaken. Who is paying for it? If you are paying for it, tell us that, oh, I'm paying for this. I have allocated so much money to take care of this because I believe in XYZ.
Because I'm interested, because I want to know.
You know,
I
so, you know, I think it's because he's probably had this um, history of not being asked tough questions by the media. So he expected that for the rest of his life to continue like that. Until somebody asked him a question he wasn't prepared for, he wasn't expecting, they had not been heard, and all of that.
well, unfortunately, the gentleman in question and all of those around were very apologetic for asking the question. So,
Again, it's the education we need to continue to do of our profession. That is our constitutional duty. We need to be able to ask tough questions, hold those who put themselves in the public space accountable. You can't just come and do this abracadabra for people and then you go away. I mean, there are fundamental questions behind your actions that maybe when we understand those better, they help us also understand what you're doing. But
well,
like you said, that was the topic of the meeting for the former minister. And unfortunately, there is insufficient appreciation by journalists of their role and their rights as journalists.
well, Edith, here's the problem: gaps, so many training gaps. No training is going on. No, and then we're looking for money. And so we're putting it back on your table. Where are the media development agencies? What are you guys doing? How can we save the media? But more than the media, how can we safeguard society from the kind of leadership that is not accountable to the people because there is no gadfly and no one asking questions?
Well, we have to appreciate the value of the media. When we appreciate the value of the media, we will invest in the media. We will invest in training. Journalists will invest in providing the right kind of incentives and infrastructure for the media to be able to perform the role that is both traditional and given to it by the Constitution. Unfortunately, at the moment, that awareness of the role of the media and appreciation of the importance of that role does not exist. So we are left with what we have.
Guys, I've been talking with Edet, and it's been 1 hour of um, some interesting conversations, a bit of a heartbreak for me, and just me thinking about where do we go from here. I hope that we can figure it out, and I hope that agencies like the Media Rights Agenda, the International Press Council, and all of the other groups that are working, the NUJ, the Guild of Editors, the NPAN, can sit around a table and have this conversation. Indeed, even the Federal Ministry of Information can facilitate it. The truth of the matter is that when a country doesn't have a gadfly, a lot of things will happen, and the citizens will continue to hold the shorter end of the stick. Until 4 p.m. next week, this is Ibeen. I've enjoyed every minute of this conversation with my friend, Edet, and I hope you have too. And again, like I say, keep the conversation going. The truth of the matter is only when we talk that we can change our communities. It's been a lovely evening. See you next week.
Thank you very much, Abel.
Thank you, Edet. Thank you very much.